Okay, we are now recording.
Oh, I can see that.
Cool. Welcome to Multiple Offers, a real estate show with competing perspectives. Today we are talking about how the coronavirus is affecting the real estate market.
What are you, some kind of real estate agent?
We're not doing that part, are we?
I don't know if we're cutting that in or what. We can decide that.
Doing it live.
Yeah, doing it live.
Easy West song too, so probably not the right one.
So guys, this is a little bit different today. It's nice to see your faces. I'm going a little stir crazy.
I bet. Yeah, I saw Jer last week, but like Jeff, I haven't seen you in like a month.
Yeah, I've probably been working from home for about 3 weeks now. I was in the office a little bit over the last couple weeks, but I had to clear out keys. They asked us to not be keeping keys in the office anymore. And went and picked up some checks and turned in some paperwork, and that's been about it. How about you guys? What does life in the apocalypse look like for you?
Oh, I haven't stopped working, just because we had some people that needed right when things kind of hit the fan. Some people that needed housing.
Yeah.
So Jer's had a lot of work to do.
This isn't a bragging thing, but just to give, because it is a bit of a barometer in some ways. But we've did the tally, 5 firm deals in the past 4 weeks and 2 in conditions right now.
Wow, you guys have been busy.
So still kind of plugging away, and not because of any sort of marketing efforts or trying to be working. I was in some ways looking forward to having some isolating time.
I only chuckle there because we haven't been busy. Jeremy's been busy.
Oh yeah.
I've had a few more people engage me recently though. So now that we kind of understand how we can safely engage in the market, I can interact a little more. I was doing spring break with the kids. I grew a beard. I'm going to fix my hair now.
I'm really disappointed we didn't get to see Matt's beard. Yeah.
Yeah. We thought we'd maybe introduce the beard on the show last week. I couldn't make it.
No. I like that none of us are wearing hats. Feeling a little self-conscious about hats lately.
I just want to make it a little more classy on this show.
Yeah.
This is the first time I put on a collared shirt in days.
I feel like, are we wearing the same shirt? Feels like that.
They're pretty close. Yeah.
No. I went with something dark in case I spilled food on it.
Yeah.
So should we talk about what real estate looks like now? I mean, it was kind of interesting. The BC government did declare real estate an essential service, which I don't know about you guys, but I was really stressed a couple weeks ago. Not so much because they might close real estate down, but if land titles closed, I've got 5 people kind of moving into new places this month. That's what I've been doing, is mostly.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that never scared me. Because I couldn't foresee a scenario where the government could really close things down that tightly that you couldn't have just basic land transfers happening. So that was never a worry for me. It was just would we be able to conduct new business? And now we've adjusted. The fear has passed, and we've found ways to feel comfortable conducting business if we need to. The need has been limited for me so far, but it seems to be growing.
The sub fear to whether they were going to close land titles down, I think that the more realistic fear number 2 was when they said no more evictions. For the first couple weeks until it got clarified, the question was, well, what about people who are moving into a new place? And, the whole point of no evictions is they don't want anybody stuck without a home right now. But when they first announced it, it was like, okay, but you've got person A bought home number 1 and is moving into it. If the tenant decides not to leave, you've still got a homeless person. It's the person who bought it, which they did clarify that going back, that stuff all stands. But for a couple of weeks, like, I had everybody moving into tenanted properties calling and making sure that those tenants actually were going to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't have the fear. I didn't have all the tenants moved out of places that we had that were tenanted. We have one buyer that gave notice before sort of COVID. So I did check in yesterday because that completion's coming up in a couple of weeks, just to make sure, like, hey, were they able to find something? Because everyone was kind of on lockdown. You had people saying, I don't want anyone in my home. So it became a challenge. My biggest fear, aside from obvious virus issues, was completions coming up where you don't know if the people have a job or not. And we heard stories of people getting, the bank has the right to call before they fund that property, that purchase, and see, like, call HR. Are you still working? Does this person have a job? Are they laid off? So there was that whole thing that I was worried, and the domino effect that maybe the place that they sold, the buyer on that place. So there's just so many moving parts with real estate. And if you start getting people, not working and not being able to fund purchases, it can have a huge snowball effect.
That's very real. I was talking to someone who was laid off, and they had a completion coming up, and they called their lawyer and moved their signing date with the lawyer to before the layoff took effect. Like, their boss had told them they were laying them off at the end of the week. They went in on a couple days before they were laid off so that they could honestly say, no, I am employed, and signed off on paperwork, because I guess the lawyer had warned them that would be part of the process, is checking, are you still employed? And I don't know about you guys, I've been calling a lot of people, and I mean, there's a ton of laid off people right now. It's massive.
Yeah. One thing I would add to that, Jeff, I remember you brought that up. It feels like maybe 2 weeks ago now, from one mortgage broker we work with, I've heard that are actually looking to honor mortgages that were approved, even though maybe people have been laid off or will be laid off. Like, they're so some people may not need to rush to make that declaration. So I would say, if you're working with a mortgage broker who looks out for your interest, they can kind of dig around and find out what those specifics are for the consumer without maybe getting you into too much trouble.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're working with a mortgage broker versus the bank, that mortgage broker works for you. They're on team you. So communication, I think, if you're in a tough spot, is really important. Knowing that they're on your side, they're going to try and help you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuance of what's going on. I should forward you the email I saw, because it's actually, there's some interesting clarification, but I kind of stay out of it. I'm actually interested to hear from you, Jeff, because I think you said you have some of the stats for us on March. Now, March was what? Half of March we were kind of picking up and going good, and then the second half of March was making everything change. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to look at our March without any context, it would just look really good. Like, there's comparing March 2020 to March 2019 in New West, there were 269 home sales. A year ago, there were 108. So, I mean, way better. And like, average price was up about in houses, it went from 1.115 to 1.2. In condos, smaller gain, but still a gain, 525 to 547. The average prices being negotiated off is a little higher on houses. People are 4% is being negotiated off on houses. It was 3.5% a year ago. Only 1% was negotiated off on condos, and it was about 2.5% a year ago. So, I mean, without any context, the stats are great. My fear is exactly what you said, Matt, that the first half, we were having a really hot market up until this happened. And I wonder if the first half of March's stats kind of cooked the books a little bit and kind of padded the stats. I think April will be really telling. Or Jer will just sell all the condos and keep everything propped up.
Yeah, we get asked this like all the time, what we think is going to happen. Like, no one knows. Like, we've never been through this before. We've never had this level of unemployment with the layoffs, although a lot will be temporary. We talk about on the food side, like all the restaurants that have been closing down. We don't know if they're going to even open back up. Some have made concessions and made sort of, found creative ways to deal with this and still sort of sell some food. But we don't really know. And I mean, one thing I've been kind of watching, we haven't seen, like, there's been a couple articles that have sort of been like the doomsday articles, like we're going to see a collapse that we've never seen. This is going to be like the Depression. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But we haven't seen the buyer confidence shift, the seller confidence shift. We haven't seen a big flooding of inventory on the market. So I think in terms of the real estate psyche that's out there, the people, they're still okay with listing their place and still looking and still buying. I'm not seeing a huge like in terms of like the sales price ratio, how much are people getting off of their purchase? Everyone's, sellers are kind of sticking to their guns. There's a bit of this notion that, well, if you're selling right now and you're buying right now, it's kind of for the same reasons. So it's this mutual kind of phenomenon, that's a scenario that's going on. So we're not seeing, these huge drops. Like, I'm not seeing a huge change in pricing.
Have you guys launched any new listings since this started?
Two. Our one listed and sold with like first showing, and a new one coming up soon. But yeah.
And how has your marketing changed around it?
We didn't really have a chance to do much marketing for that one, hey Matt?
Oh.
No. So we just, you don't price aggressively, but you price fair, and it seems to get a response as long as it's kind of like any sort of softer market. The good stuff is selling at the right price. And when the good ones come on, you can stick to your guns on price, and usually there's someone will buy it for somewhere around there. Like we say that all the time, but if it's good Class A kind of property, people will purchase it right now.
I'll speak to two things. One, sort of the marketing process and how it's different right now for the one that we're going to launch next week, and two, just calling back a little bit about what we've seen in the market recently. With our listing coming up next week, what's different is we are trying to, now we've always done video, a fair amount of video, but we're going to do even more. We're going to take the video camera into the closet, make sure that no stone is left unturned so people can see as much as they want to while they're in there. And just coming back, speaking a little bit to where the market is right now, I wanted to say that I've noticed that a lot of properties we're calling on are selling quickly in the first couple of days. Some of them are getting into multiple offers, pricing those all over the map. I called on a townhouse the other day. It was asking $795. It'd only been on the market for a week, and I thought maybe I'd get to see it. And the response back I got was it sold unconditional. But asking $795, unconditional, it sold for $760.
Oh wow.
Wow.
That's a different result.
Kind of weird. So there's a lot of these weird little sort of things here and there, but generally it seems there's an appetite to buy. And with our new listing, I'm very curious to see how people buy into it with all the video content that's there. So we'll add that in. I'm also curious to hear from you guys, because Jeff, you've had active listings since before this happened. Jerry, you've been doing showings. Listeners, viewers, how should they be informed here about the way that we're doing showings? How is this being facilitated?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And one thing when you're talking about doing video and looking in the closets and stuff, the video has become a lot more important, and a tool that I was using for a long time, but I can't believe how much more important it is right now, is 360 tours. So for people who don't know, this is where you photograph the house with a 360 camera, and you essentially create like a Google Maps or Google Earth view where the person can walk around the home before they ever see it. And I get all the analytics. Like, we had a listing that we launched the week before this. Normally on a listing, I'm expecting somewhere around 300 people to use those 360 tours. We had over 900 people check it out when we launched it. And we've actually turned that into a first showing request. So a request comes in on the home. The first thing that happens is we send them an email saying, hey, in order to lower the amount of people coming through this home, we'd like you to take a look at this 360 tour first. And if you love it and want to take a look, after that, we'll have a little questionnaire for you on your health. And as long as everything's good, we'll be happy to bring you through. Now, you guys know as well as I do, but this might come as a surprise to some of the listeners. Even if you have a gangbusters home, I would say only about 1 in 20 people who look at it are going to love it, even if it's amazing. And so these 360 tours are actually really cutting down the number of showings, because I follow up a day afterwards and I say, hey, did your buyers, if it's another realtor or if it's a direct buyer, like, do you still want to see it or whatnot? And a lot of times they're like, oh no, the kitchen didn't work for us, or, oh, we looked in that master bedroom closet and it's a little too small, or we really wished that all 3 of the bedrooms were on the top floor together. Like, all of these reasons that if they had walked through the home, they wouldn't have bought it. We're kind of handling those objections beforehand. And it's weird. Like, all of a sudden I feel like my job is to reduce the number of showings, which is a strange feeling as a realtor.
Yeah, well, and we've always known that most people who come through aren't going to love it, but sometimes people who maybe wouldn't have fallen in love with it on the internet will fall in love with it in person. So our message to clients has always been, oh, bring as many people in, live people as possible, because you never know when someone's just going to click and connect with it. So it is definitely a big reversal to say we're trying to talk people out of coming to see it in person, trying to get them to fall in love with it in the internet. We came across one, Jer was interested, I had people interested, where the agent showed no one in person and did a multiple offer, and the accepted offer would be subject to then viewing the property in person.
Was that in New Westminster?
Yeah, it was on the Quay, Laguna.
That's surprising, because I've been talking to some agents in Vancouver, and a lot of them in Vancouver are doing that. I hadn't seen it in New West yet.
No, she's not a Vancouver agent. She's Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
Either way, her client didn't really want people in there.
Yeah.
And
I found that we had a lot of that early on, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Of the sky is falling, this disease is everywhere, we're all going to get it. So like, I don't want any of you people in my house. And it's just sort of bad timing for them to be on the market if that was the case, but they really froze up. And it was hard, but for the most part, the show, because I've been touring quite a bit with people, it's a lot of sanitizing, a lot of hand washing, 2 people in the elevator, don't touch anything, just a lot more precautions. But I feel like it's only maybe 10% of the listings I try and show that potentially have someone that's doing the Jeff model of like, look at all this stuff first before I'm even going to open the door for you.
Well, I would think, Jared, that a lot of people aren't even set up for it. I kind of had all of it already in place beforehand, and I can tell you, almost every agent I send it to, their response is, "Oh my God, thank you so much." Like, yeah. Our model has changed too, right? Like, realtors don't want to be showing more homes than they have to right now.
Well, a lot of times our clients are kind of, we set up these auto searches, and it's really easy for clients to, like, they look on their own sites. We go through the trouble of making the search, and they still want to do things on their own and be more hands-on. So they're not doing that research. I mean, you're talking about bedroom account, like, oh, it's not 3 bedrooms on 1 floor. Like, people could just look at the floor plans, but you have agents that don't put the floor plans, like, it's in the document link, so it's not actually available to the public, instead of rather, being in the pictures. Like, that in general, like, I'm trying to think of positive things to come out of this. Getting knowledge of the floor plan ahead of getting out to see the property. Like, we could streamline everything based on checking some of these boxes that we didn't need COVID. We don't need Mataport's 3D 360 tours to see if a floor plan's bad. I'm really hesitant about making those kind of real estate decisions without actually being physically present, because things are skewed. It doesn't tell the whole story. There's kind of just a lot going on. But if that filters out a lot of the tire kickers, then sure.
Oh yeah. And don't get me wrong. I believe, you're making probably the biggest investment of your life. You've got to physically see it at some point. But if you're going to be like, oh, I hate this kitchen, you can probably eliminate those people before they ever come.
Most of my people would probably, unless they knew this floor plan, like if we're talking about a condo or knew this house specifically, it was just like the holy grail for them, they're probably not going to want to be involved in the subject to viewing. Like, it's kind of a hassle. If there's a handful of properties that work for them, they're like, that seems a little bit much to me. I understand though, if you have a family, they're susceptible to the virus, or they've got health issues and things like that. I understand that extreme precaution, but in general, as like, this is how I'm going to handle all real estate transactions subject to viewing, I think it's a bit crazy.
Yeah, and I don't know. I wouldn't be launching a listing that well. I'm launching a listing on Monday, and I'm not planning to try and get people to do subject to viewing, especially because you could go through this whole process and then they view it and it's not right for them. Like
it's a little too limiting. That's another thing that's kind of interesting about now. Like we used to try and list places on Monday and Tuesday or so, you'd have the bulk of the listings come up, and it was always kind of annoying, like people listing places on Friday and just gets missed. People don't even know about the open house. But a good chunk of that was for timing for open house.
I had that too. I was talking through with a client like, oh, we got to get it ready for Monday. And then I realized why we don't have an open house to market to. We're not allowed to do open houses. And I think that's right. We don't want just like 30 random people who, just wandered off the street coming through the home. But yeah, the whole schedule of real estate is totally different.
Well, I still think people who are going to be making a purchase decision are like, and they have very busy Monday to Fridays.
Yep.
So their opportunity to see it in person, I think, is still on the weekend. But they want to do their research to decide if they want to see it in the week leading up to it. So I think there's actually still a ton of value in prioritizing listing on the Monday or Tuesday. Because I mean, a lot of families are out there even looking. And I mean, for me, like I am overwhelmed Monday to Friday right now, fitting in work and then maintaining mental health of all the people in my house and then facilitating schoolwork with the kids. It is a full day.
So counterpoint to that, if I look back at the showings I had last week, and there were a fair bit of showing requests that came through, every one of them came during the day midweek. Like it was just like, I think there are a lot of people who aren't working their regular hours, and I think there's a lot of people who are working from home who are like, well, I could sneak out for an hour and go look.
Oh, that's fair. That's true.
Less accountability. I know Matt's saying that, but our next listing's going live on Wednesday, so
nice.
Well, we got a couple days before the weekend.
I still think Friday's a weird day to launch a listing.
Yeah, well, and you want just time for things need to percolate, and then you kind of reevaluate after the weekend to see if anybody's interested to make an offer. So, I mean, what it sounds like is sellers and buyers who are engaged in the marketplace, they've adjusted. There's an acceptance, there's been an adjustment, there's definitely activity happening. A lot of people watching and listening are wondering, is it going to come to a head where things all come tumbling down? Are there going to be a lot of foreclosures or distressed sales, those types of things? We've even seen it in our work group chats where people are like, hey, anybody got anything that's a fire sale? I can jump in and get a good deal. What do you say to people looking for that happening?
I haven't noticed, none of our clients have been the predatory type. Our phone, I haven't had any phone calls, phones ringing saying like, I'm just going to buy something right now because it's dirt cheap.
Not yet. Do you think though, Jeff, that the market is going to be seeing some sort of collapse where there will be these massive price drops?
So I the one thing that makes me a little fearful, I follow a guy out of Toronto. He's an awesome guy. He does a ton of business in the kind of downtown core of Toronto. And he's been posting that their numbers have been dropping quite significantly. Now, Toronto has like 9,000 cases of corona the last time I checked, versus BC was under 2,000 the last time I checked. So they've been hit a lot harder. But I mean, just like this is what he just posted. Last year, average price was $932 for properties sold in Toronto between April 1st and April 13th. There were several million there were some high numbered sales, which skews the number. Our median numbers this year are 773.
I never look at average median pricing.
Well, it's a story, so it disappeared. But he also had number of sales, and those numbers were down massively too. But I don't have the actual.
And inventory. I mean, you look at our inventory number, and we're still like, well, for March, low. Like that's the interesting thing.
No, but that's the thing is our sales were like huge compared to last year. Maybe inventory was down, which is why the sales were so huge.
But still very much supply and demand.
Yeah.
market. So
my point is just we could get there. Like I don't want this to all be, oh, everything's amazing. Everything's way better than I think we all expected it to be.
No, it's a horrible time right now.
Yeah.
My counterpoint to that, Jeff, is that that circumstance in Toronto is relative to a health scare. And currently we're on a trajectory that we won't have a massive health scare in BC, but we are going to have a large economic issue. And does the economic issue cause distress sales? Because as long as we're out there feeling safe to conduct business, and that's what's happening right now, we are safely conducting business, that can happen. It's going to take an economic driver to change prices. And I'm curious if that is something that, I think the consumers are expecting that to happen. You know, foreclosures.
And that very well could, right? Like one of my favorite pubs in Vancouver just closed their doors permanently. They said they can't afford to come back.
Yeah, I read about that.
Even after this is done. And their post, and I don't know if it's true or not, is that up to 75% of Vancouver restaurants that are not chains could end up closing their doors. Now, I hope that estimate is high, although I've heard numbers very similar from people who work on New West City, for New West City, that they're sort of bracing themselves for numbers similar to that of small businesses to go out of business. If that happens, we're in a lot of trouble. I really hope that we're all back to work before it gets to the point where people can't afford to reopen the doors. I think if people can reopen the doors when this all goes back to normal, then we're going to come back to a pretty strong, healthy market. But, you know, if nobody has jobs, it'll get really ugly.
The powers that be seem to be starting the prep work of how do we do a slow, soft opening, soft rollout. And so, I mean, I've had a fair amount of faith in how things have been handled. I mean, just look at our COVID numbers, I guess have been okay compared to some of the other areas. So, and, you know, in terms of economic stimulus and interest rates, and we'll probably potentially see more cuts to interest rates. You know, they will do everything they can to try and prop up the economy. It's not going to save everyone. But that economic fallout is going to be the thing to watch over the next month or so.
Did any of you see what the announcement was right before I got on this call? Apparently there was some new measures that are being released to sort of help stimulate.
Matt knows.
Yes, Matt.
My wife is a news junkie, so I get the info. Actually, I caught it. She was out. One of them was that there's been a lot of pushback for folks who are working part-time and are getting some income. They didn't qualify for any support, so they've modified that.
Oh, that's nice.
If your income is less than $1,000 a month, you will qualify for support. So that was one. Another major stimulus was that they're going to look at giving a lot more support to the long-term care facilities. And I didn't catch all the nuances of that, but again, it's similar to what BC did, but it's across the country now to make sure that there's enough cash there to allow those workers to stay at just one facility. Those are the two new things today. And effectively with that $1,000 a month coming in, it puts almost everyone who was working into a bucket that they can now claim some sort of support if they're not earning enough to pay some bills.
Well, and talking to people who have been laid off, the majority of them have found getting the funds that are being made available a fairly easy process, which
shocking
is pretty cool. Yeah.
Totally shocking. But they're going to get audited. If they have falsely answered any of those questions, they're having to give that money back. Sorry, we just got a notification on the screen. It distracted me.
Yeah.
It's the fine print, right? And just like be careful. This isn't just free money. Same thing with like the mortgage payment deferrals. It's not quite
you're going to pay interest on that interest.
Not quite the golden ticket that a lot of people sort of thought they were getting.
That's actually worth talking about. So I did the math. My mortgage is with Scotia, and I've got about $600,000 on my mortgage. And I did the quick math, and if I was to take a deferral for about for 6 months, the interest added would cost me about $10,000 over the lifetime of the mortgage, and it would add about $50 a month to my payments. Now, I might have made some mistakes. My mortgage math is not, I mean, we have to learn that stuff when we get our real estate license, but it seemed to me like, and I mean, $50 a month is not nothing for people who are scraping by. But if you need that to get you through, and I think the other thing too is, you can pay down your mortgage a certain amount every year so that when the renewal comes down, maybe it's not as bad. But I was just kind of looking at the options of what that looked like. And
it certainly beats destroying your credit.
Yeah.
Let's maybe close this out here for people. We've talked about the support systems that are out there, Jeff. We're talking about you considering deferring your mortgage. Maybe people are wondering about what's going on with us personally, because we're talking about how we're working, but we're doing limited business. And as far as we know, we don't qualify for these support mechanisms. And maybe for people who don't understand that, that's because for a deal we did 2 months ago, we may be still waiting for a paycheck a month later than today. And as long as a paycheck is coming or you get paid in some sort of interval, we don't qualify. Even if after we get that paycheck a month from now, we don't work for 6 weeks, we don't have income coming for 2 months after.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's listening, wondering about us, how are we all doing? I think I'm going to be okay.
We've been lucky. Yeah, I mean, lucky enough that real estate's still happening, but yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, I haven't done any deals for about a month. I'm bored. Really bored. I'm used to being a pretty busy guy. But I'm really lucky. I had an absolutely fantastic start to the year. So I was ahead of my goals for what I was trying to do. So I think by the time this comes out, I'll probably be at about where my goal was, even though, I might have a month or two of not doing any business. So I'm very grateful that I'm not feeling financial pressure on top of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, which is fortunate for us. And I guess when you say that, Jeff, when things come back, that's the last thing people maybe need to know, is that we expect it to come back with a flurry of activity and probably some upward pressure on prices. Hard to know how much pressure, because people may be conservative, having been financially stressed for a few months leading into it.
Yeah, I mean, if people are still working and we're not in a national unemployment crisis, I'm expecting us to have sort of a delayed spring market that will get a lot of what was looking to happen in our right now in sort of July, August. And I think there were a lot of people getting ready to make a move. And all those people, even other than Jer's clients, the majority of those people have put their plans on hold.
I was going to mention that, though, the seasonality of it.
Yeah.
We, in some ways, we're kind of fortunate that this happened somewhat early on, because we potentially still have May to start the wheels of recovery and June, and it's still like a normal time to be busy in real estate. That's a best case scenario, but
yeah, I'll eat my words if I'm wrong. I don't think things will be back to normal by May. I think June would be a very early hopeful time, but I think we'll be feeling this through May.
Yeah, probably.
A long time to come. There's going to be fallout, right? But
yeah.
Well, good to see your faces, guys.
Yeah.
Are you signing us off? Is this it?
Yeah, I think we gotta kind of wrap. But if you got something lined up for next week, or is that a maybe right now?
Yeah, we've got to confirm a time, but we've got a agent out of Toronto who's been getting in touch with us about maybe coming on the show, and he's a pretty impressive guy. So I don't want to tease it too much just in case it doesn't work out, but we will be back next week, either with our special guest or with something else. And if any of you guys out there want to get a hold of Matt or Jer, they are the New West Guys. You can reach them at thenewwestguys.com. If you want to reach me, Jeff McLennan, I'm at realestatenewwest.com. Thank you very much. Okay, I am going to end the recording.